His name was Adekunle, a name that meant the crown fills the house. But his small hut was empty of everything but silence. He was only a boy of 7 when the sickness came. It was a quiet thief in the night. It took his mother first, her laughter fading like the last notes of a song. His father followed soon after, his strong hands which once lifted Adekunle to the sky, now still. The boy was left alone. The Harmattan wind blew dust through the village, and it seemed to carry a new kind of cold, one that settled deep inside his small chest. He would sit outside his hut, wrapping his thin arms around his knees, watching other children run to their mothers. He watched them hold their father's hands. His own hands remained empty. The village tried to help. An auntie would bring him a small bowl of fufu, an uncle would pat his head and say, "Be strong, little one." But their pity felt like a thin blanket, not enough to warm him from the deep chill of his loss. He learned to be quiet, to make himself small so that he would not be a burden. He learned the language of loneliness. It was in the way the cooking pot stayed cold. It was in the darkness that came too early each evening. He missed the smell of his mother's stew. He missed the sound of his father's stories. The world had lost its color and everything was now the gray of ash and dust. He started to do small things for himself. He learned to fetch water from the stream, his small bucket heavy and awkward. He learned to find wild yams in the bush, his small hands digging into the hard earth. Other boys would play with carved wooden toys. Adekunle's only game was survival. Each day was a mountain to climb. Some days the sadness was so heavy that he could not move. He would lie on his mat and cry, the tears making clean paths on his dusty face. He cried for the warmth of a hug. He cried for a voice to call his name with love, but no voice came, only the whisper of the wind. He remembered his father's words. "A man's spirit is his greatest farm," his father used to say. "Plant courage there, and you will never go hungry." The words were like tiny seeds. Adekunle did not understand them fully, but he held on to them. He would repeat them to himself when the hunger in his belly was sharp. He would whisper them when the night was too dark and full of strange sounds. The words were a small light in a very large darkness. They were a promise that he could not yet see, a reason to wake up the next morning and face the day, another day of being alone in a world that felt too big. Growing up was a series of hard lessons. Adekunle learned that hunger was a constant companion, a dull ache that never truly left. He worked for other villagers, his small body doing the work of a man. He would carry heavy loads of cocoa pods for a few coins. He would weed farms under the hot sun, his back aching and his skin burning. The coins he earned were never enough. They would buy a little gari, a little palm oil, but the hunger always returned. He watched other families gather for their evening meals, their laughter and chatter drifting through the air. He would eat his small portion alone, the silence of his hut amplifying the sounds of his own chewing. The loneliness was a different kind of hunger. It was a hunger for connection, for a sense of belonging. At the village square, he would stand at the edge of the crowd, an invisible boy. He saw the easy friendships of others, the way they shared jokes and dreams. He had no one to share his with. His dreams were simple, a full stomach, a safe place to sleep, a kind word. These simple things felt like distant stars, beautiful to look at, but impossible to reach. He learned to build a wall around his heart, to protect it from the pain of seeing what he could not have. The wall was made of silence and hard work. There were moments of despair, moments when the weight of his life felt too heavy to carry. One rainy season, the roof of his hut collapsed. The rain poured in, soaking his only mat and the few clothes he owned. He sat in the cold, wet darkness, and for the first time he thought about giving up. What was the point of fighting so hard when the world kept pushing him down? The tears mixed with the rain on his face. He felt a deep, hollow emptiness. It was the feeling of being completely and utterly defeated. The world was a storm, and he was just a small, broken shelter. But then, as the morning sun broke through the clouds, something shifted inside him. He looked at the wreckage of his home, at the mud and the mess. He remembered his father's words about a man's spirit being a farm. He could not let the storm wash away his seeds of courage. With a deep breath, he stood up. He started to clear the debris, one broken piece of thatch at a time. It was slow, difficult work. His muscles screamed in protest, but with each piece he moved, he felt a small spark of defiance. He would not let the rain win. He would rebuild. This small act of rebuilding his hut was the first step in rebuilding his life. Adekunle knew he could not stay in the village forever. His dreams were bigger than the small patch of land he farmed. He saved every coin he could, hiding them in a small clay pot buried under his floor. He denied himself food to add one more coin to his savings. It was a slow and painful process. Finally, when he was a young man, he had enough for a bus ticket to the big city of Lagos. Leaving his village was frightening. It was the only home he had ever known. But he knew that to grow, a plant must sometimes be moved to richer soil. He carried with him a small bag with his few possessions and a heart full of nervous hope. Lagos was a shock. It was a loud, chaotic, and overwhelming place. The city moved with a speed he had never seen, a river of people and cars that never stopped. For weeks he slept on the streets, finding shelter where he could. He took any job he could find, no matter how small or dirty. He swept floors, he carried goods in the market, he cleaned cars. He was just one of many faces in a city that did not seem to care. The loneliness he felt in the village was different here. It was the loneliness of being invisible in a crowd of millions. But he did not let the city swallow him. He observed, he listened, he learned. He saw how the traders in the market made their money. He noticed what people wanted to buy. He used his small savings not for food, but to buy a few bars of soap. He began to sell them on a busy street corner. At first people ignored him. He was just another street hawker. But he was polite. He was persistent. He had a kind smile, a genuine warmth that was rare in the harsh city. Slowly, people started to buy from him. His few bars of soap became a small box of soap. His box of soap became a small stall. It was a tiny success, but it felt like a miracle. His small business grew. He worked harder than anyone else. He was the first to arrive at the market and the last to leave. He learned to read and write in the evenings, teaching himself under the dim light of a street lamp. He learned numbers and accounting. He was honest in his dealings, and people began to trust him. He saved his profits and invested them wisely. He started a small transport business with a single old bus. Then he bought another. His father's words echoed in his mind. He was planting seeds of courage, and now, finally, he was beginning to see the harvest. His spirit was no longer a barren farm. It was becoming a green and fertile land. The years passed, and Adekunle's hard work transformed his life in ways he had never imagined. His small transport business grew into a large company. His investments in property and industry flourished. He became one of the richest men in Nigeria. But he never forgot the boy who slept in the rain. He never forgot the ache of an empty stomach or the sting of loneliness. His wealth did not build a wall around his heart. It opened a gate. He started foundations to build schools in poor villages. He created programs to feed hungry children. He gave opportunities to young people who, like him, started with nothing but a dream. His kindness and wisdom became legendary. People did not just respect him for his wealth, they loved him for his heart. When the old king of his region passed away, the council of chiefs looked for a new leader. They did not look for someone born into royalty. They looked for someone with the character of a king. They looked for someone who understood the struggles of the people because he had lived them. They chose Adekunle, the boy who was once an orphan, who once had nothing, was asked to wear the crown. His name, Adekunle, the crown fills the house, had finally come true. As king, his palace was grand, but his door was always open. He was known as the king who remembers the rain. He would sit with farmers and listen to their worries. He would visit orphanages and hold the hands of the children, telling them stories of hope. He ruled with a gentle strength, his decisions guided by the memory of his own difficult journey. He made sure no child in his kingdom would feel the deep loneliness he had known. He built a kingdom not just of wealth and power, but of compassion and care. His reign was a time of peace and prosperity for his people. Adekunle's life became a story told across the land, a story of hope. It is a reminder that our beginnings do not have to decide our endings. The deepest valleys can lead to the highest mountains. The story of the orphan who became a king teaches us a simple, powerful lesson. It teaches us to never give up. No matter how dark the night, no matter how heavy the storm, we must hold on. We must keep planting seeds of courage in the farm of our spirit. For it is through resilience, through the refusal to be defeated by hardship, that we find our true strength and can, against all odds, build our own kingdom of grace.